as a PG podcast, but then Devin just kept on dropping shits and fucks, and
I'm just trying to figure out what's in her mouth.
I just want to see him interview Francesco Accoli.
Oh, he's a good human being, is what he would say about himself, I'm sure.
Who's hosting this thing?
Take charge, Kevin, would you? Jeez.
First time we ever met those guys. That was the major drunken pub argument.
I think you guys are the worst.
I'm going to have to probably watch some Canucks hockey, unfortunately.
Just making friends left, right, and center, and probably some enemies as well.
Tell him to shut up. He needs to hear that every once in a while.
Off to a good start.
All right. We are live.
It's okay to talk when it goes live.
It sure is. That's what we will be doing. Welcome to the Hockey Podcast. You can, of course, follow us on Twitter at podcast_hockey, Facebook.com, The Hockey Podcast, YouTube.com, The Hockey Podcast. We are sitting at 100 and Mark Giordano of subscribers. So thank you for those that are subscribing. And of course, you can subscribe to the audio shortly after this. Just to start, we say hello to Tyler. Hello.
Hello, guys.
And as Devin called him, Yelly McPants, because of all the people that are the yellers on this podcast, Tyler is the one that is considered the yeller.
I don't know what to say about that.
I think it was actually Yelly Pants McGee.
Yelly Pants. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the misquote. Yelly Pants McGee.
I don't know what he's getting at there. I am the calm and rational one here at all times.
That's very true. Sean, I think even Chris would not be Yelly Pants McGee.
No.
you had to get me pretty riled up for me to raise my voice.
Yeah.
Fair. Well, and then there's Sean.
I was about to say, if anyone's yelling past McGee, it's me or Devin.
Fair. How's everyone doing? It's been a while. It's actually only been a week.
Yeah,
I feel like it's been a while.
So much.
But with the amount of recaps we've been doing, Kevin, it probably felt like 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah, you spent too much time with Devin.
He's just dragging you down.
Devin is dragging me down. I'd say, or am I dragging Devin down? Who knows? So if you have any comments or questions, we'll get into that as we go on. We're going to start with the playoffs, and then we haven't had a chance to do the deep dive into the Canucks. We did the deep dive Wednesday. We did a deep dive, Devin and I, in the Flames, and that's you can check that out on the podcast there on the Wednesday podcast. I think I was actually supposed to edit that, and I didn't. Maybe I'll do that today. Anyway, sorry. But I totally forgot about that. Oh, and Devin is here in spirit. See?
Perfect. I was wondering how long it would take before we heard from him.
Yeah. The 3 minutes and 54 seconds. And then we still have the swears are not on yet. But when we get to the Canucks, we'll do that. Let's start with the game tonight. And then I think we'll save... We'll tease. We have a juicy topic coming up, but the Winnipeg Jets, on the strength of when we did our all-Canadian team, Heidi's last pick for a defenseman was named Tucker Poolman, and Tucker Poolman is the one leading this series in points with 2. Now, it's not like a drastic amount of points, but the Winnipeg Jets are up on the Edmonton Oilers 2-0. Devin, who's still in the chat, and just wanted to point out that he's still there.
Time with a swear, 4:49.
4:49. This has been a fascinating, very fascinating series. I know watching Oiler fans and Oilers media go up in arms to actually, in a lot of ways, some of Oilers media is refusing to give credit to the Winnipeg Jets. But I think that Jets are well deserved to be up 2-0. We've maligned their defense. Their goaltending was outstanding, and they're getting goals from people named Dominic Torino. That's not Dominic Toretto, by the way. So yeah, the Jets. Let's start there. What are we thinking? I'll start with Tyler, maybe.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I'm surprised that they're up 2-0. But it's the old adage that the games are played on the ice, not on paper. I mean, obviously, it's not mathematically a must-win for the Oilers tonight, but they're down 2-0 already, so they got to get a win here. I think it's only a matter of time before the floodgates open for the Oilers. But the Jets, with their coach Paul Maurice and playing a stingy style and everybody pulling together. I guess we shouldn't be that surprised. It was just that how poorly the Jets played down the stretch didn't leave me, or I think very many people at all, feeling like they could flip the switch and take a lead like this against the Oilers with their star players. And I'm not going to use the term non-factor or non-existent with McDavid and Draisaitl, but there has to be a lot more from those two, obviously, if the Oilers are going to get back in this thing.
Yeah, like clearly Paul Maurice found a way to light a fire under their ass after the end of the last regular season game. So the Jets have been playing well so far, and yeah, let's see if they can continue that on.
Well, the key that I pointed out in our preview was Connor Hellebuyck and how he's struggled against the Oilers this year. The stat was every other Canadian team he had a 9-10 or better save percentage against, and versus the Oilers it was 877 if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was in the 860s or the 870s.
Yeah,
it was really low.
That was the biggest issue, is that the Jets had arguably the better goaltending, but that goaltending did not perform well against the Oilers this season, and we're seeing Hellebuyck step up and play the way we know he can. And if he continues this way, it's going to be a very tough series for the Oilers to come back in.
And it's not like, I guess maybe from the Oilers' perspective, it's not like Mike Smith has been awful. I mean, I thought he fought it a little bit in game one, but I thought he was really strong in game two. And it's not, Tyler, I don't think McDavid and Draisaitl have been necessarily terrible. They haven't scored, but it's the James Neals, the Alex Chasons, the Zach Cassians, that bottom group that you sometimes need to find ways to win when your stars aren't necessarily able to get on the board. They're not doing it. And that's part of the problem.
Well, you mentioned off the top Tucker Poolman, there's a contribution and a key goal to win in game one. I guess, who would have thought we'd see games that are this low scoring? I mean, game two I thought was really entertaining. We were chatting about it offline, and it was a 1-0 in overtime game. I'm not going to put any blame on Mike Smith. The Oilers just got to find a way to score. I mean, that's their strength. That's how they play. I think they've done a pretty good job of not letting games get out of hand or not getting too sloppy defensively. I think they've been disciplined, but they're a team whose strength is offensive firepower, and it's dead right now. And now what's concerning is, now Winnipeg's the home team. Edmonton had theoretically the advantage in matchups with line changes, and now they don't have that going on the road. And Tippett's tried both having the two guys on different lines in game one and then putting them together in game two, and neither has worked. So where do they go from here? That's the big question. I suspect they'll be playing together in game three tonight.
I know that tonight, apparently they've moved Kyler Yamamoto to the fourth line, and they've moved Nugent Hopkins, McLeod, and Zach Cassian together. That's interesting. I mean, Yamamoto's had it tough, but fourth line, playing him less than Zach Cassian, I would scratch my head. I mean, I do think McLeod should be playing a little bit more, but and to be fair, though, for the Jets, I mean, it's not like Scheifele is dominating either. Like, the Stars in this series do not have any points. It's the non-playoff pool people that are the ones that are doing that. The non-pool men, get it?
Yes.
Get it?
But
yeah, the Oilers are making some big changes on the roster. Cahoon, Neal, and Chason are out. So those are three guys that you when going into the season you would have thought would have been key depth players for them that they would need to go into a long playoff run. So if those guys aren't making it work, then your whatever depth that the Oilers had is almost gone, and they definitely need the McDrysidles to step up. Otherwise, they're going to be they're gonna get goalied, and Hellebuck's going to steal this series from the Oilers.
For the sake of curiosity, who's their replacements?
I've got their lines from their morning skate up here right now. So the second line you mentioned, Nuge, McLeod, Cassian. Third line, Shore, Kara, Archibald. Fourth line, Ennis, Haas, and Yamamoto.
I think it's Haas. Who was on that third line? Was it
Shore, Kara, and Archibald? Yeah.
Yeah. So they're I think they're trying to it'll be interesting. I think players like a Shore and are good to have in your bottom six, but when you're basically a one-line team, you kind of need to find some goal scoring elsewhere, and it's going to be. I know I've talked with a friend of the show, Graham Moseman, and he's basically yelling and screaming, thinking that Dave Tippett's overthinking this and making too many changes. Especially
wasn't he carved up in the bubble last year for not making enough changes?
Mm-hmm.
They're just when the players let you down, it's just a damned whatever you do situation, right?
But at what point do you try and split up McDavid and Draisaitl and try and build two lines instead of just loading it all up on and putting all your eggs in one basket?
Well, I guess we go back to earlier in the season where we noticed them make that change, and we noticed I was cynical about it when they did it against Ottawa. Obviously, they wouldn't want to go into the playoffs, not testing that out because they want to have that as an option. But now we really see with the chips are down. Now we really see what is it that they're going to go down with. And based on the morning skate here, again, it's not an elimination game, but it's one they got to have, and they've got them together heading into Game 3, trailing 2-0. So it's I guess that's the organizational philosophy. If they're gonna be eliminated, they're gonna be eliminated with their two best guys playing together.
Yeah, it's not like that you're going to shut down McDavid and Draisaitl though for 4 straight games. That's just not going to happen.
No.
But ultimately, at some point, it's those bottom guys that I think the Jets do have the edge. I mean, I've been so impressed with Andrew Kopp. I've been so impressed with Adam Lowry too. I'm just going to point this out for a later conversation. Just going to put this out there. The only bottom 6 forward that's getting paid over $1 million on Winnipeg is Matthew Perreault. We'll save that for later. Just pointing that out.
Yeah.
And Derek Forbort, I mean, ex-Flame. I mean, not that he was going to sign with the Flames, but he's been a revelation. Devin has been a big fan of Dylan DeMello. Logan Stanley is growing into this. And Sean, Neil Pionk is better than Rasmus Anderson right now. So that much maligned 6D for the Winnipeg Jets that we've had people covering the Winnipeg Jets come on our show and say that this defense is very questionable. They've been outstanding. They've been the stars of the show.
Yeah, it's they've gotten the job done so far. Doesn't help. It doesn't hurt that they've got go back to goaltending. Show me a good goaltender and I'll show you a good coach. That old mantra, right? Show me a good goaltender and I'll show you good defense, a good blue line. And right now, Edmonton's still controlling most of the play. In terms of shot attempts, out of the 2 games, only Ethan Bear has a less than 50% shot share, sort of shot attempt share, than on the Oilers. So it's it's not like the Oilers are like it's the ice is tilted in favor of Winnipeg for these two games. It's just that they've been able to sort of build a nice shell around Hellebuck and let him see as many shots as possible, and he's still making good saves when needed. But yeah, it's good to see there are some underrated defensemen on that Winnipeg blue line that I don't think people realize are as useful and good as they can be. As they thought. When you just look at the raw numbers, even the underlying numbers, I think they've got a good chemistry there right now. But it's still a long way to go if they can't. They can't let up. They have to. If they lose tonight, then this series is back open. And if they can't have, if they don't have, they need to win tonight to really shut this series down. If they don't, it's still wide open for the Oilers to come back.
Yeah. And then I guess the other thing, Parallax Prophecy chatting in here, Dave, are we feeling an out-coached here?
Right now, I think so. Yeah, I think there's a thing where I do think that Dave Tippett has overthought things and is getting out-coached.
I think the bit at the end there, a little bit. Yeah, I wouldn't say severely so, but I mean, it's a 2-0 series, and the Jets have found a way to shut down a couple of the game's best players. So, I have to say that Maurice is out-coaching Tippett at this point.
Yeah, hard to disagree.
And then Paralyzed Prophecy also is challenging my assessment here. I'm just here's what I'm seeing on Cap Friendly. Trevor Lewis, 750,000. Nate Thompson, 750,000. Mason Appleton, 900,000. Dominic Tonato, not Dominic Toretto, 700,000. I guess you go, okay, Perreault, Lowry, and Kopp, I guess, would be the only three that are making, sorry, maybe they'll correct me there. Perreault, Lowry, Kopp are the only three making over $1 million. Which is probably the envy of not only the one team that we're going to, the Canucks, but it's probably the envy of a number of teams.
Well, yeah, having Mason Appleton being a 900K player is huge. He's a great energy player for their fourth line, can move up the lineup when needed. But they've got Kopp making 2.28, Lowry making 2.9 and change for this season. Perreault at 4.125. Like, they still have some big contracts making, some players making big money for a bottom six role. I think you got a little confused with that first game when they didn't have Ehlers and they didn't have Dubois, so you had to move Kopp and Lowry up in the lineup. So, but when healthy, they've still got three players making significant amounts of money on the cap. But they do, and you still need those players as much as you don't want to pay them too much. You still need those players, and you still need to have a good veteran players who are making $2 to $3 million. You need one or two of them in your lineup, and they need to make. But the other issue is they need to be worth that money, and that's the difference between the Jets and other teams that have struggled, including the Canucks, which we'll get to later.
Yeah. So that series will continue at I think we might expect a Nikolai Ehlers debut tonight as well. Maybe. Yep. So that's
the reports that I saw this morning.
Yeah. So fascinating game. I will be back to recap that after. But we'll talk about that. Let's go to the other North series, which has been more. I don't think it's been the conversation as much on the ice as been as much off the ice. The Montreal Canadiens Toronto Maple Leafs series is tied at 1. I think that we had the whole John Tavares, Corey Perry, Ben Sherratt situation from game 1. And then last night, we had a very, very, very head-scratching decision from the Montreal Canadiens, which appears to be Marc Bergevin from what I think the challenge. Do we want to start with the thing that I think we're going to probably have a debate about, or do we want to start with the thing that I think we all agree was a bit of a head-scratching decision?
I think let's just get the review out of the way, the coach's challenge out of the way. That was very head scratcher. I think it was just a hope and a prayer, hoping that they could find a way to keep it 2-1. I think I think the emotions got the best of whoever made that call.
I'm surprised that hasn't come up more often. I mean, yes, the 2-minute penalty is a real, deterrent against doing the Hail Mary challenge. But when you're trying to keep the score 2-1, that's really a Hail Mary. Like I can understand that when you're down by, say, 4-1 or something like that, where so what if you get the penalty? So that was head scratching. But yeah, in the playoffs, emotions get the best of people in all sorts of ways, and this is a new one.
Yeah, and it was just weird too, because the Canadiens took 2 straight penalties. You put them you at the risk of everything else, you put them on 3 straight penalties, and the Canadiens just simply couldn't recover from that, for sure. So, but apparently there was an angle that appeared that we didn't see on TV that appeared that Joe Thornton knocked Carey Price's stick. I didn't see it. There was nothing there to me, but.
I think it's a case too of people seeing what they want to see, right? We have these debates all the time over what's a penalty or what's not a penalty, or how many games a suspension should be, and that's another case where if you're the Montreal Canadiens, you're seeing that there's interference there somehow, even when the rest of us aren't, right?
Yep.
And
all
then
right.
it just the length it took too was just added to the mind-boggling feeling of that whole thing, and that was because there was a review and a coach's challenge in the other game going on at the same time, in the Minnesota-Colorado game.
Yeah. Anytime you get to hear though "Enter Sandman" from Metallica and a whole song, I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
But to quote Elliot Friedman, if the review's not done by the time Enter Sandman is completed, it's time to call to go with the call on the ice.
That was the other thing that was strange here. Was that whole situation. To me, I'm surprised that there wasn't someone separate watching the specifically each game, that you had to wait for one review and then for the other. That's a little weird to me.
Yeah, especially considering during the regular season, sometimes they'll have 15 games in a day, and lots of them are overlapping. But I don't know. Is COVID protocols limiting the number of people in the war room?
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? It is a good question, though, Kevin.
It definitely seems the most likely COVID related.
Yeah. All right, let's get into this. I know that we're not going to agree on this, I think, but that's okay. We still have to have we haven't got your perspective on it. The whole Ben Sherratt hits John Tavares, Perry's knee hits John Tavares. First of all, I think that where I want to start, obviously, it's good that John Tavares is okay. He did injure his knee in the process. I think just for him. For that layer, I think that's great. But I think where the debate is happening was the choice after from Nick Foligno fighting Corey Perry, and that I think that's where I think on that one we're probably going. That's where the debate is. Maybe I'll start with Chris. I didn't hear from Chris in the chat, so I'll give Chris the floor here, and then we'll go Sean and then Tyler. What were your thoughts after all of this? And
all right, well. I think it's kind of well established that I don't think Corey Perry intentionally meant to have that knee hit him in the face. But that being said, Corey Perry has a reputation that precedes him. So I'm not at all surprised that Foligno actually went that route and decided to do that. From his point of view, he was just basically living up to the code of my captain is on the ice, likely has a concussion. I need to do something about that. So it's just your old school hockey mentality that came out with Foligno there. I really don't have an issue with that. Like, are some people going to think that it maybe went overboard? Possibly, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah, it's an emotional time, and I've been thinking about this for a while, and most of the time, even after someone gets stretchered off, you just start the game right over again. But I think this one just felt different in terms of how it was the captain. It was just the way he got hurt was really unfortunate and just looked worse than, especially when they tried to hold him up. I think that's when things really escalated to a point where I think maybe they should have maybe tried to take a breather. But because they didn't, I think there was two things that happened with the fight. One was that, yes, it's Corey Perry, and you're always going to have that doubt that he's not, that it wasn't accidental. Even if you're like 99% sure, there's still going to be that 1% doubt that you there. Also, I think Nick Foligno looked at it and like, I need to find a way to get the energy back up. And we talked like trying to do that with your team. That's part of the strategy of having fights in hockey. And if you want fights in hockey, you're going to have fights like that. And Foligno versus Perry should have been a fair fight. Should have been a good matchup, but Foligno ragdolled him more than anything else. And I think the way the fight came out made it feel and look worse than I think it actually was. If fighting is in hockey, those fights are going to happen. We got into this debate with the Edler and Simmons one, and even if and everything there. But for me, this is just part of the game. That right now, the way the hockey rules and unwritten rules are right now that's the fight is the fight. And I think if you don't like fighting, great. That's on that. I'm here to listen to that argument. But if you like fighting in hockey, that's the type of fighting you're going to get.
Well, and on that, if you don't like fighting in hockey, it's careful what you wish for, because if you take fighting out of hockey, what is the effect of that in other parts of the game, right? And I think that you could start heading into some pretty dangerous places there around dirty hits or stick work. So, my feeling on fights is if you've got two willing combatants, what's the problem with it? They were both willing combatants. If you look at the replay, I mean, Perry's gloves were off before Foligno's gloves were off. So Perry wasn't sent off the ice and knocked out. I mean, that can happen, and we don't want head injuries. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but at the end of the day, it's Perry gets it. Foligno is a former captain himself, so he understands the situation. And I think what a lot of people, that had feelings on this, at least on the Twitter, was missing the whole team unity thing. Sean talked about this too. This came up in the Simmons-Edler situation earlier in the season. It doesn't really have to. There doesn't really have to be much justification for a fight when you don't get a game misconduct or don't get suspended for it. I mean, if two guys want to go, they go. That's been around for a really long time, and yeah, we can debate whether that should be in the game or not, but it is right now. And Foligno challenged Perry, and Perry didn't seem the least bit surprised that he would be challenged. And I think we can all agree that there was an accident. But the players on the ice, they don't have the benefit of the TV broadcast. They're not looking at a bunch of replays. It's happening way faster to them down there. And they see their captain laying on the ice with blood coming off his face, and they've got Corey Perry involved. Somebody there is going to be seeing red, and then that's what happened with Nick Foligno. It is what it is. I know I was getting a ton of flack for my comments on Twitter about that on Saturday, but basically I think people need to try to put themselves in the position of a Maple Leafs player in that moment and understand the whole sticking together bit there. Like rational thought and logic go out the window when emotions are running high. And it's Leafs Habs game 1 in the playoff series. Of course, emotions are running high.
I think my problem is this was an accident, and I understand that I'm not admonishing in any way that Corey Perry has not done dirty things, because he has. He's no saint. in any way, shape, or form. So I don't want to come off here and say that I'm defending Corey Perry. As I heard someone say on the radio, I'm all for, if Corey Perry is getting punched in the face, I can support a Corey Perry being punched in the face for the most part. But this was an accident, and I understand the emotional part of this, and the argument that I haven't played the game is fair, but I mean, I understand emotion. If any one of you got hurt, I would probably want to come in and defend you in some way, shape, or form. That's an emotional reaction, and it's a human emotional reaction. I just think that there has to, with all of what happened there, what I didn't like, I mean, it's a fight, I get it, but it just felt like that what I saw from the fight part of this is there was a potential, the way that Perry landed, and I don't think that Perry truly was defending himself as much as he could have. I mean, it looked to me that Perry took the fight more out of obligation than it did like, yeah, I'm going to stand in here and throw some punches.
Well, that was Edler as well, right? Against Simmons.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if they're both willing to go, it's kind of the case is closed once they've had the fight, right?
Okay, but let me counter that question though. What if Corey Perry says no?
Well, then we've got a much bigger issue.
That's the next question. And the way that fight looked,
I mean, if Corey Perry said no, given that it's Corey Perry, I mean, boy, he would just get crucified for turning that one down.
Right.
Like, you saw Kachuk had issues like turning down a fight. That would have been even way worse for Perry.
Yeah, I guess the way that Perry, it looked like that just looked to me that had a potential for another concussion. Like the way that Perry was landing on the ice, to me, that there was where I was like, that just. I was brought back to the Brett Ritchie Jujhar Khaira fight during the regular season, and that understanding the justice part of that, just the punch and how Khaira got up, just made it that is starting to make me feel a little. Even Artemi Panarin, who what happened to him, it just. The helmet not on the ice and the head landing on the ice is something that is just not making me feel very comfortable, and that just had the potential for another concussion. And that's one of the things I'm extremely worried about there. It's one of my.
Let me ask you a question there, Kevin. I'm just coming to mind now, but do you or other people who had such a big problem with the fight have a problem with it because of how lengthy the delay was and how, quiet the building was and the scene, right? The stretcher came out. Like, it went on for quite a while. It's a very traumatic event. So, sometimes you'll see a hit and then, they drop the puck and there's a fight. It all happens fairly fast, right? In this case, this kind of stretched out for a while. So is that sort of what makes it worse for people? Is like, geez, we just had the game delayed this long, a guy just taking off on a stretcher, and now we're going to have a fight?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think, to me, there has to be a way. I was thinking about this too, because I was like, my original thought was this is similar to a puck off broken glass, or something like you have to, like something that is a delay where you may need to take the players off the ice, get everything fixed, and bring them back. I was originally thinking that would be an idea, but I think what maybe needs to happen here, and I don't know the situation, but I'd like to know a little bit more, is where's the team psychologist in this? Because this was, to me, again, if we're going to have a conversation about mental health, this was, to me, was, as much as this was a physical injury, there was a mental injury here. And some players can get up and they can get out through all of this, and they'll play through it as best as they can, but some will really struggle. And I think that the importance of getting a team psychologist involved in both, like, you could see that both teams were clearly shooken up by what happened. And I mean, I think it was partially blood on the ice, the way that it was uncomfortable to watch Tavares try to get up. It was an extremely uncomfortable situation on TV. I can't imagine that not being anything different on being there live in that moment. I think that there has to be a better way to get through some of those traumatic situations for the players a lot better than okay, get the puck up and we're getting going. There has to be something that fixes that, and I'm not sure what that is, but I think that has to be looked at.
On the point of taking the players off the ice, I mean, I don't think they want to be taken off the ice. So you see something like that, you want to. It's kind of like the dramatic car crash, right? I mean, you can't not watch it. That's one thing, but also, you want to feel like you're there with your team for your.
No, not during the thing, but I think
Yeah.
at least something has to happen between the incident and getting back to the ice. That I think either like, if you're not, like, you just basically say if a couple players aren't ready to play, we just take them off the ice, take those off the ice, and then whoever's ready to play can keep going, or something like that. There has to be a way to adjust that.
Yeah, but who's going to actually step up and say they're not ready to play?
Well, then that's part of, I think, where the other people are talking about where hockey culture needs to make a change.
That's not hockey culture, Kevin.
I think it's just human culture.
That's just human.
Well,
nature.
then there's something with us within humanity that says that it's okay to take a step back, and that's
I think that's fair. But there's also the people out there. Everyone deals with grief and trauma differently. Some people need time off. Some people are ready to go and need to move on.
Yeah, we agree there.
Yeah.
So I don't think there is one way to actually handle this properly. And this is such an outlier incident that we rarely see. The only this is more closely related to when we've seen players have medical emergencies on the bench, more than a regular injury, in my opinion, because of how it looked and just watching Tavares try and sit up was just, it felt a lot worse than a regular injury. Even ones where players get stretchered off have been stretchered off in the past. It just felt different. So I think they do need to look into some of that stuff, but I do think that they have to also remember that this is such an outlying, such a extreme incident that doesn't happen very often. And if you take out that part and then you look at remember how many times there have been scrums and fights because of a clean hit on a star or a captain. That's the other thing. Don't forget that this was John Tavares, the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
And I think, I'm not saying that you don't defend someone. I just think that there seemed to be some unmitigating other factors in this that I think played into this situation. That's where I'm coming from. I mean, yeah, and I think you look at and even at that game, the Leafs were clearly not in a good headspace. The Canadians scored pretty quickly after that. Even Wayne Simmons admitted in the intermission that they were not back up to that. That goal probably cost them the game. I mean, as the game went on, they were better, but it did affect them. And I just think there has to be something that helps the mental health of the player. I think that's something that has to be looked at. I think that it's far more complex than what we can do here on this podcast, because I'm not a doctor, but that's something I think I would like to see looked at.
And I think that's a completely different discussion than arguing over whether the fight should have happened or not. I still think you take the players off and you give them 10, 15 minutes to try to process and everything, and then you bring them back on the ice. I still think that fight happens.
Yeah, and
but is it okay? That's fair, but is it, maybe it doesn't look as that Foligno Perry fight doesn't look as bad to me than that. That's where I'm coming from.
And I think it's all optics more than anything else. And actually, you look at the facts and you look at how things are. The majority of the issues here are the optics of and what happens if that fight was like you've talked about what happened if Perry said no, or if Perry had hit his head. What happened if Perry and that fight was more evenly matched and Perry actually made it a fight? How does that make how does that make everyone feel? I think it's just there's a lot of hypotheticals and a lot of extenuating circumstances and just different situations here that we're dealing with that fall just outside the norm of what a normal situation would look like.
So just a couple things I wanted to mention. I mean, an easy solution to what Kevin's looking for. I mean, yeah, if the sports psychologist is in the building, bring him down to the bench. You know, I don't think you need to take the players to the room, but bring the psychologist in, have a little huddle, little talk to try and settle everybody and get back at it, right? And the idea of delaying the game even further. I mean, from the human side of it, that there's some valid points to be made there, but unfortunately for broadcasting and business purposes, the game needs to continue, and it needs to continue fairly quickly too because of how long the delay has already been. In regards to, in this case, Foligno, in the case with Edler, Wayne Simmons, I mean, I think we can safely say there's a bit of there's a pattern there with the Leafs, and they're veteran players, the role players on that team, and they're great players. One of the things they wanted to address by bringing those guys in is the team unity thing, and I think we've seen that on display here now a couple of times. And I'm never going to criticize that from another team where you have that internal bonding together effect, right? That you need that to go on a deep playoff run. And look at how the Leafs unfortunately couldn't rebound on Thursday and win that game, but look at how they performed last night. I mean, they really took it to Montreal, and the momentum shifted their way. And I think all of us would agree, if you're in that room and you've got your captain out now and maybe out for the whole run, I mean, this is this time to pull together and rally around our guy.
Yeah, I feel like someone's going to say something. I was waiting there. Yeah, I mean, certainly the Leafs. I mean, they didn't get off to a good start. Devin and I chatted about it last night. They didn't get off to the greatest of starts, but as the game rolled on, they certainly seemed like they got everything. They got things together for sure, and they started to play their game. And I would admit I was wrong. I questioned the Sandin move, and I admit that I was wrong there, but. Yeah, I mean, they have a lot of. I mean, they seem to be rallying around that. They seem to be having a lot of rally points throughout the year. I mean, you look at even Jack Campbell; it's been something that they've been able to rally around. They seem to be as a team in a unified state, which is something rare that I think we've heard from the Maple Leafs overall. I don't think that we've seen this kind of rally before. This rally mentality. I've said my piece, and that where I'm at. The other part of this though is what Kyle Dubas did in addressing the headlines, which I'm not going to show, in both the Toronto Sun and the Montreal Gazette.
The Journal, Montreal.
Or was it the Journal? Yeah, I wanted to say the Journal. Yes, I think what that also helped the Leafs in that the general manager is there to stick up for how the players are feeling. And those headlines that's a Toronto Sun tradition, unfortunately, and it's a really horrendous tradition. They were inappropriate. And I think that helped unify the Leafs a bit, that their general manager stepped up and said, look, this is inappropriate. And how he said it too. Our players feel that this was inappropriate. I think had a lot to do with how this with a bit of unity. And I think I'm not saying Kyle Dubas. Someone tweeted that Kyle Dubas is the best general manager ever. I'm not saying that, but I do think what Kyle Dubas did, I think, brought a sense of unity to the league.
I don't, from their perspective, I understand it. I just, in general, don't ever think it's a great look for a general manager in the middle of a playoff series to be complaining about media coverage. It doesn't come off to me as feeling very confident in how the series is going. But you do see that from time to time where they try to deflect the attention and try to give something. The general manager doesn't have a lot of levers he can pull at this time of the year. So I get it from Kyle's perspective. I mean, last season, I think Francesco Aquilini was on Twitter taking shots at the media in general about the JT Miller trade. And, again, I get it from their perspective. He's going to bat for his general manager. I think if you're Jim Benning, you'd like to see that. But from this, at the same time, the look in general, the owner of a team kind of, picking a fight with the media, it just, I don't see how that's very productive, most of the time.
I think this is a different situation, though, than just going after the media or that we've seen in the past. I think this was, again, I think this incident is just so different than from what we normally see that I think it is. I don't blame him at all, and I don't think it is something that you can compare to going after the media for hypercritical opinions on trades and moves.
Yeah, Chris, were you going to say something?
I didn't see any of the headlines, so I can't really speak to that in particular. But if anything, I would kind of agree with Tyler that like the optics doesn't look that great. It looks more like you're on the defense as opposed to like just trying to move on past it. So I wouldn't say it's a good look, but at the same time, I can't really have a too strong of an opinion without having actually seen the picture and the headline that the Sun and the Journal put out.
Yeah, so the Sun, the headline said Captain Crunched, and it was an image of Tavares, and there's blood in that image. And then the one in the Le Journal de Montreal was a shot of the knee contacting Tavares' head. So that one wasn't as gruesome, but both of them were in poor taste, I think, in most people's opinion. What was funny about it, not ha-ha funny, but like comical, sarcastically, was I think the editor of the Toronto Sun basically was on Twitter doubling down on it, saying, it happened, people saw it, and that's what we went with. So no apology forthcoming there.
Yeah, I think I think in that, because it was that, I think all of that, and I think the way that Steve Simmons and Austin Matthews, that whole conversation, I think that this is something that I think from the Leafs players' perspective has been building, and I think that has a lot, and I would argue, I think in a Canadian market you need, I'll save that comment for a little bit later, because I think that there's something parallel to what's happening in Vancouver in some ways that I think if Vancouver could use, not Kyle Dubas, but something that Kyle Dubas offers that Jim Benning doesn't. That's a tease. We'll move on. But actually, I got to pause. Tyler, you're French.
I was working on it the last couple of days.
That was impressive.
Oh, I don't know that much French. A little more Spanish probably than French, but even that's fading.
Fair enough. Let's just get into some of the other playoff series. I'll leave the floor open of any other series that's caught your eye.
If you haven't been watching the Battle of Florida, you're missing out.
Yeah, that's been great.
That's been great theater. It's great emotional, on the edge hockey. You've got some chippiness. You've got like scrums almost after every whistle. That's playoff hockey, and that's why we love playoff hockey. And that's why we, like, when you talk about all that, like we just talked about, I want emotional, physical playoff hockey that's on the edge, because it's entertaining. It's fun to watch. Even if it's a 4-1, 5-1 game, you're still watching because you want to see what happens next.
Compelling is the word, right? There's a reason to stay tuned to see what's around the corner. And if we start talking about trying to take fights out of the game and stuff, I think, we've already, I think from 15 to 20 years ago, lost a bit of the bite and the compel factor in hockey. So any attempts by people to take more of that away, I think is, trying to make the sport boring. I don't favor that.
Back in the olden days, Montreal and Philadelphia, back in 1989, I want to say, they had a bench clearing brawl before the game even happened.
Well, remember, was it in '84? Was the Nordiques and the Canadians where they had a brawl? They got them all off the ice. They flooded the ice, and then they all come back out and keep going. That's getting a little extreme, but we're still talking about it to this day.
And they didn't even use skates back in those days.
They had to lock Ron Hextall in the equipment room so he didn't get into that Habs Flyers brawl. Yeah, it's a fine line. It's definitely a fine line, and that line moves. I think I'm okay with where the line is moving, but I do think we need to, and that's this is such a big, huge overall discussion that goes into that dips its toes into many different parts of, and it's discussions, debates, and arguments that happen within hockey, from supplementary discipline to fighting to just how games are officiated on the ice. It's you want to see that heat, you want to see that for lack of a better term, hate, because when you have that, it's so much more fun to watch. It's so much more compelling. It sells more, because then you can sell better storylines.
Rivalries are a big part of what makes playoff hockey awesome to watch.
Mm-hmm. Like you think we're Canucks fans. Look back at the lead up to the 2011 and the Slay the Dragon. One of the reasons Slay the Dragon felt so cathartic and so amazing as a Canucks fan was because that rivalry with the Hawks was so heated and so good. You had line brawls where Keith and Burrows were going at it. You had people like Adam Burish and Dave Bolin making stupid comments, and you had all that, and that's what took it from two good hockey teams going at it to another level where you've got that hatred and that rivalry, and you would look forward to those games. That's why this Tampa Florida series is so good.
Yeah.
And the fact that the fact that the Canucks and Hawks had been playing 3 times in the first round in consecutive playoff years, like it just adds to the drama.
And also, let me just add the fact that there's fans in the stands.
Oh yeah,
has been, and even you look at the Pittsburgh Islanders. Devin is right. Nobody's giving the Islander fans any credit for the noise that they make. That is like, man, they know how to noise. But it is certainly, I mean, Devin and I were commenting on like that the first Oiler Jet game 1, it was so different watching that game without fans as opposed to watching some of these games with fans in them. That has been a difference. And
yeah,
you know,
I mean, the fake crowd in Edmonton's doing their darndest there to, give it the usual atmosphere, but it is just a real. It's quite jarring, to go from one game where you got all these fans and even 5,000 fans can get ref you suck going pretty fast, right?
Yeah.
And then you go into the North Division games and it's just poof, there's nobody. It's jarring for sure.
Yeah.
But if the Habs can win one more game and get this thing to a 6th game, apparently there's going to be 2,000 or so fans at the Bell Center.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We can look forward to that.
Devin chiming in here. Damn straight, I'm right, Kev.
Yeah. I'm with Devin in that like go back a few years too, like when was it not last year but the year before when they took out I think Pittsburgh in the first round, was it
2 years ago?
Yeah, 2 years ago, and the how loud the old Nassau Coliseum was back then with that grind line that they have. That was it, Clutterbuck, Matt Martin, and I can't remember who else is on that line, but they would just go out and hit everything that moves, get the arena rocking, and go. Like it's just you can build energy and momentum from that, and it is sorely missed. Today I was able to watch the last Liverpool game of the season, and it was at Anfield, and they had fans and they were singing "You'll Never Walk Alone," and that was stirring and moving. And then it's just fans add so much to it. I can't wait. I really, really hope that we at least get Game 6 in Montreal with 2,000 fans. They've waited. What are we at now? over what 14, 15 months since they've been able to, and they come back, and it's going to be an elimination game versus the Leafs. If that happens, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, you can imagine even the streets in Montreal if that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy.
Guaranteed every single Hab fan in that arena would have their voice gone from singing Ole if they happen to win.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But it does suck, but we gotta deal with what we have right now, and they're still putting on. It's still compelling hockey. There's still stories that are up in the north that are happening. But yeah, it's so much fun to watch these games. Even the double overtime with Carolina and Nashville, and having Duchesne score the game winner in double overtime in Smashville. Letting those fans get to celebrate. That was awesome to watch.
Yeah.
Marty Nikas is a bit of a pest, eh? Nobody talks about him as a pest. Whoa. He's a bit of an ass. Yeah.
Nowadays we like to use the phrase nature is healing. Just watching those games with fans and mostly filling the lower bowl definitely falls under that heading. It's just like, we're getting close to normal again. It's a good feeling. Just before we pivot off to other playoff topics, Kevin, I have to get this in here. Of course, it wouldn't be a week or so into it without coaches complaining about the fairness.
Yeah. The refs, you mean, yeah.
Yeah, so we had Rod Brindamore, quote, "You can't tell me 2 games in a row we get 7-8 penalties and they get 3, and when the game's this even, it's not right." So I guess Rod wants it managed more evenly. So there's that. Those comments are pushing it with, he didn't say they were being screwed or jobbed, but he's definitely pushing it on the integrity thing there when he starts pointing out the number of calls. And then I guess Craig Berube's had his beefs, and, on it goes.
John Cooper had a beef.
Yeah. The refs have an impossible task. You can call it by the book, and you're criticized for that. You can call it like we traditionally see in the playoffs, where there's not much of enforcement based, compared to the regular season. That's questioned. So good luck, fellas. You're going to need it.
John Cooper's got the biggest beef out of all 3 of those, because he's lost potentially 2 star players to one was definitely a dirty play with a slash to the back of the leg. And then the other one was a borderline boarding call. That when I first saw it, that's the first thing I said. Well, that's boarding.
Yeah.
That hit on Sergachev.
Yeah, the definition of boarding is contacting a player that sends him into the boards in a violent manner, and that was an awkward and violent manner, right?
And for me, I always look at whether or not the player can defend themselves when deciding whether or not it is, but and that looked like that to me. But it's playoff hockey. We've seen those hits get let go in regular season, let alone playoffs. So it's let alone was it in that series as well? Yeah, it was Mason Marchment coming out of freaking nowhere and absolutely destroying a Lightning player. He didn't even touch the puck. The puck was in Dreger's. Dreger had it, and Marchment comes out of nowhere and just absolutely runs over that Lightning player. And I couldn't believe that wasn't called for interference or whatever. So I think out of the 3, I think you got Berube and Brindamore just trying to play a little bit of politics and trying to get some calls. You always see that happen in playoff hockey. But for me, I think the one who has a legit beef is the Tampa and Cooper.
I guess we should very quickly just address Nazim Cadre as well.
That too.
Suspension there, like that is an eye-popping number. Yes, he has repeat offender status, but 8 playoff games is like how would we equate that to regular season?
Well, according to Brian Burke,
like 15.
Yeah, 15 or 16.
Yeah, like that's a lot of games. I know he really lined up the guy with that hit to the head, but holy moly,
I think that was a repeat. That's part of that inconsistency though, where the player reputation gets involved in this, and that's part of it.
Yeah.
Apparently he is appealing it, so we'll have to see. I think it's a suspension, and I think a lot of what it's what's frustrating with NHL player safety. Again, it just feels so inconsistent. I mean, you do this with Nazim Cadre, and then there's other situations that you don't do it. So it's not that I do think Cadre deserved a suspension for it. Well,
I mean, they handed Tom Wilson, what was it, 7 games for a high hit there earlier in the season? Again, regular season games, guy with a reputation, whatever you want to say about it.
The high hits are ones that they're really working hard to get out of the game, because they're deemed the most dangerous for player safety. So whether or not they are going to, especially for someone who has a history of doing them. And they put out a tweet bringing up some linking to their frequently asked questions about player safety, and what is a repeat offender is one of them. It's 18 months following the most recent incident that's resulted in a suspension, as well as they put it. I don't know if they've added this or what, but it is important to note that even if a player is not defined as a repeat offender, his past history may come into consideration when determining future supplementary discipline. And I think that's what happened here. I think he probably got a couple extra games because this is the second playoffs in 3 years that he's made a really bad hit on a player. And I think they wanted to really send a message to him on that.
Yeah. And Colorado really is missing him. Sarcasm.
The question I would like to ask, though, is if we all agree that it's a suspension and we all feel like 8 games might be a little much, what do we feel is how many games he should have got?
I was thinking 2 to 3, but, if he was not a repeat offender and he was, this just kind of came out of the blue, probably 1. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with that, but that seems more in line with what we've typically seen.
I think part of it was that I think they may have taken how well Colorado's playing, and they're because this last one was the end of the Toronto Boston series. So that I think it was like 3 or 4 games. And I think this one is being designed to take him out of the next, to give him a significant enough that he misses games in the next series.
Yeah. Regular, I would probably, I guess if you're going playoffs, I would say probably 2 to 4 would be, I guess if it was non-repeat offender, regular season, I would say 8. I guess that would probably be equivalent. So
I would expecting 4 to 6. But I like that they're taking a stronger stand on this, because those are the dangerous hits that they need to get out of the league.
Yeah, I mean, if they maintain this, strictness going forward, then I think we'll get the desired outcome. I'm just cynical and not convinced that it'll stay this way.
Oh no, I'm with you, Tyler. I'm very cynical. It depends on the hashtag, really.
And for the sake of picking a table, I thought it was 4.
Nice. Chris is picking a table.
You're coming along here, Chris. It's great.
Good growth.
Now we just got to work on Kevin.
Yeah. The only other thing I wanted to just very quickly, I just want to say this. The Washington Capitals, should they lose tonight, they have not won a series since they've won the Stanley Cup in 2018. I think that is going to be a very fascinating offseason if that happens. And I'm also very intrigued of what happens if the New York Islanders do end up defeating Mitch Milani's Pittsburgh Penguins and that offseason. I think will also be very fascinating to watch. I think I have Washington in the expansion thing, right? Yeah, I do, don't I?
Yeah, it's gonna be very like that. Just the expansion draft is the monkey wrench into a lot of these teams' off seasons with we cover closely too. They're going to have big off seasons, and then there'll be others as well.
Yeah. Devin's hot take is he doesn't think Malkin will be back with Pittsburgh next year. So,
Berkey's going to push for a big move.
yeah, that's Devin's thinking there. But we'll see. All right, let's jump to the Canucks here. It was another week of adventure and conversation. It even had a 10-person protest outside of Rogers Arena yesterday. But Jim Benning, another banner. But Jim Benning is staying. Travis Green's extended. Rumors of the Sedins arriving. We'll start with Chris. Kind of maybe just give where you're overall at here.
Thankful that we still have Green. That's the chief thing for me. Like the way that the headlines and the rumors and all that were going throughout the week, it made it seem like Green very easily could have been gone, that we were letting him walk. And I was very much against that decision. If anything, it's a fire Benning, keep Green, which I believe I said last week. But the fact that we extended him, the fact that they're both basically on the same timeline, that their contracts expire the same offseason 2 years from now, I'm okay with. Do I think Benning's going to get to that point? I don't quite have confidence in that, but overall just relieved that we got Green.
Yeah, I'm quite happy that they got Green, but job's still not done. They still need to figure out what the rest of the coaching staff looks like, and specifically Ian Clark. They need to get Ian Clark signed. Demko and Demko's mom have come out and said that they need to bring Ian Clark back. So,
if mom speaks, you got to do it.
And everyone who watches us here and listens to us knows how much of a fanboy I am of Ian Clark, but he deserves it, and I definitely feel like they need to bring him back. Hopefully they can find a way. I'm not optimistic that it's going to happen. The way Benning talked about when asked that question when he was on the afternoon show on 650 with Riccio, Randeep, and Sat, it sounds like he's trying to prep everyone for them bringing in a new goalie coach. So I'm not expecting it, but it's going to be a very, very busy and interesting offseason for the Canucks, because I think there's going to be some big moves coming. It sounds like I do think we're going to see some buyouts, and I'm going to go on the limb and say it's going to be plural, because I think that they definitely need to find a way to open up some cap space and some roster flexibility for them going into next year. But getting Green back as a starting point is good. I was with Chris with starting off with bringing in a new GM. I thought was the right move, but I don't think Benning is lasting his final 2 years of his contract, which I believe the last one is an option year.
I'm amazed, Sean. I thought you would have said the last week was a catastrophe for the Canucks, but okay. So Travis Green, I'm same as the other guys here. It's great to see him back. He wants to be there. He's a BC guy. He's made some progress, although this year was a bad year. He's been progressing both in his own coaching abilities, but also in guiding this team through its development and moving forward with a group that most Canucks fans are excited about. I'm a little bit reluctant with the core. I think that needs to be under the microscope. I commented on that last week. In regards to buyouts, they were not tippy-toeing around the topic at all. That's definitely coming. I mean, look, we thought that status quo couldn't be a thing, and here we are. And it's status quo. It's the same coach and general manager, and the owner's commitment to the core. But I so if those things are going to stay the same, then clearly there's going to have to be some buyouts to make some cap space and make some, not tweaks around the edges, but some really significant roster changes. So that'll be quite fascinating to see. Will they bring Alex Edler back? That's a big one for me. I think over the past 2 years, he's earned the right to some more time with the Canucks, and obviously his leadership presence would be important on the team still. I just want to just sort of go into the talk around the Canucks this past week. I mean, it's amazing. I don't know if there's, who in the organization or which, maybe it's multiple people, but why is so much stuff playing out in public? Like John Shannon pointed this out. I think he was on with Donnie and Dolly this week about that. Why is everything is leaking? Like, it's just amazing. Like the Sedins and Courtnall and all that stuff. Like how have they not been able to tighten that up a little bit? At the same time, there's been a lot of speculation out there that has been proven to be quite wrong. Like I've heard, I think it was Alex Blair and others. He was one that I do remember. I think it was like on Tuesday or Wednesday, was saying, hearing that major changes are coming today. And then there were not only no changes or no major changes, there weren't any changes at all, really. So I don't know. There's something going on that's strange in terms of the speculation and discussion around the Canucks. We've had other people discuss players unhappy and perhaps players requesting trades. And now you've got players coming out and saying, no, that's not the case. We had Elliot Friedman last night clarifying, I guess, JT Miller and supposed trade request there, which turned out not to be true. So, hopefully now over the next few weeks, things can calm down a little bit and the Canucks can get to work to trying to improve the team for next year.
I just sorry, Chris. I just want to ask this question before you jump in. When Mike Gillis was running this team, was there leaks like this?
Some, but I don't recall to this level.
Yeah,
and even 2-3 years ago under this regime, I don't remember this many leaks. I think there's definitely something going on behind the scenes where I don't know if they're trying to suss out the situation and see where everyone's at with some of these moves, or just there's some people who are just leaking for the sake of leaking.
Because what were you going to say, Chris? Sorry, I feel like I interrupted.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think we can all agree that communication or lack thereof is not a strong suit of this current regime.
Yeah.
So there's two angles here that I want to ask, and this is partly where I bring in what Kyle Dubas did with Toronto, and even you look at. I mean, we've talked about this on this podcast as well from a Flames perspective. Brad Treliving has had basically the same playoff success that Jim Benning has. As a matter of fact, probably a little bit worse. But the Flames media availability had none of the explosiveness, response, anything like the way that we saw in Canuck land. And I think that this is partially Treliving and both the Dubas where they're good and where their strengths are. One of their strengths in both of their cases is that they're articulate. They know how to talk to the media. They understand kind of the nuances of things. I think they work well with their PR team. Jim Benning, I mean, Sean, you heard the Sportsnet 650 interview, and maybe everyone did, but even Satcher Shaw was joking about the Sedins and how they would help the power play, and Benning was completely lost on the joke. He didn't even get the joke. Like, he kind of just, it's just so unfortunately cringeworthy when Jim Benning talks, and you can look up the stuff about what he said about Jake Virtanen. We won't even get into that, but a lot of people were wow on that. Like, it's just too cringeworthy in one sense that I think it just makes the consumer. We bring up the word consumer confidence up there. That's one problem, I think.
Well, that's a huge part of it, I think. Like when you look at people in leadership positions, you're looking for that strength and confidence to really bring everybody else along, right? And there's just none of that with Jim Benning. But I will say It seems like somebody in the PR department has gotten through on the whole. You got to show some accountability and own it a little bit, because he did use the phrase "on me." That's on me. I think more than once in that press conference, and we would go back to the midseason press conference where he didn't do any of that and pointed the finger at all sorts of other directions. So. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if you're the Aquilinis, geez, invest in some communications department. I know they have one, but I mean, they haven't been able to straighten out Jim Benning in terms of how to conduct himself in these press conferences.
He needs to take. I'm serious. Oh, sorry, Chris. Go ahead.
I was going to say we knew that he was a little rough around the edges as far as talking in front of crowds and whatnot when he first got hired. But I think we all kind of hoped that he was going to grow into it and basically be a better communicator. At this point, clearly not the case.
He needs to take Toastmasters. He needs to go to Toastmasters. Seriously, I'm serious about that.
Yeah, no, I don't see that as a joke either. I think that would help.
Yeah, the other side of this, I want to be careful how I say this. How much of this is the need in the media to have content? And I'm not trying to be conspiratorial, but a lot of this is you've got a sports radio station that needs content every day. You've got a number of podcasts that needs content every day. How much of this is, and it's the Whitecaps are not a conversation. The BC Lions are not. They're not in the light here at this point. COVID, you need for sports. You absolutely need a distraction right now. How much of this is somewhat content driven? I'm not saying that there's hear me out. I'm not saying it's lies or anything like that, but it's making sure that there's content that we have to talk about.
I think it's almost like a perfect storm of it. All these different situations kind of coming to a head. Like the fact that we have COVID and everyone's kind of solely isolating on just watching the Canucks. And then the fact that, like you said, all the other Vancouver-based teams aren't currently playing or aren't major pieces of the conversation. So it's just all those things coming together that is kind of leading to this. And just also the fact that Vancouver is a hot media market in terms of just trying to how do I word this? They've always been a voracious consumer of just information and news and what's going on. Whereas we've compared this to Calgary in the past where it doesn't have that same feeling here in Calgary. I feel like there's almost two different tiers of markets. Vancouver, because of its larger population base, and the fact that it at one point had two stations just about all sports talk radio. I feel like it's just everything coming together. I feel like I could be a lot more eloquent with this, but
It's the
I think one
content.
Sure.
Sorry, Tyler. It's the competition for content. It's because you brought it up there, Chris. There used to be two radio stations solely talking about 90% of their content was talking about the Canucks, especially during the season. And then you have multitudes of other media, whether it's blogs or online newspapers or podcasts and everything like that. And it's just there's so much and everyone's out there to try and outdo everyone else. And the idea of the hot take it grows huge as well. I think there's a lot for that, but I also think that it's just the way, again, it's how Benning's handled it. I think that's a huge thing too. I think how Benning's handled it has raised the ire of many people. And we've got this comment from Ryan Pergante saying that one of the major issues is player underperformance versus moves. I think that's definitely part of it, but you also look at some of the moves that has happened in Calgary, and you look at how if that happened in Vancouver, if there's a chance that Dougie Hamilton and Adam Fox are Norris Trophy candidates this year, and the Flames traded them both away in one trade. If that was Vancouver, it'd be an absolute shitstorm.
Yeah.
Look at the Travis Hominick trade. They traded away a first-round pick for Travis Hamonic, and that is Noah Dobson, who looks like an absolute young stud defenseman. You look at the trade that they got Dougie Hamilton for. That trade, they gave a first-round pick where they could have had any of Matt Barzal, Brock Besser, Kyle Connor, Thomas Chabot. Like, it's just the comparisons between the two, whether or not you look at the rational things where Devin's piping in again with Adam Fox wasn't going to sign with the Flames, but still, like, you look at that and there's definitely a lot more visible emotional investment with media and the team in the Vancouver market than there is in the Calgary market, and I think that's part of it.
I think the other part too, with the sort of the market feelings around the let's just say mediocrity over the last 7 years for both general managers. I mean, in Calgary, 1989 is 32 years ago, but I still think that buys a degree of patience with the fan base. There is that Stanley Cup banner hanging at the Saddle Dome, and with the Canucks, because they would, the fans have never been to that promised land and have that to hang their hat on. It does generate a lot more frustration.
I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that as much. I think that's I think that for a lot of people, the Flames have won 4 playoff series since. I think for a number of generations, there's a number of fans that grew up here that it's not even remote like a memory for them. Like 89 is 80. Like, it's something that for the older generation it can kind of hang your hat on, but the reality is it's not for the. I don't think it's for the newer generation it even matters at all.
Oh, I mean, I think there's a lot of people in the Leaf fan base that they'll hang their hat on 1967 and years prior to that when it's convenient for them in terms of debates over their team versus other teams, right?
Sure, the Montreal Canadiens can hang their hat on 25 Stanley Cups. The
That's
Edmonton
right.
Oilers have always hung their hats on their Stanley Cups for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't think, like, from a Flames fan base, I don't think it's necessarily allowing for patience. I don't
know if it's about patience. I think it's just easier to get frustrated with the Canucks when it's been 52 years now, right? Yeah,
been really close twice, and had another run in the 80s, but that was up against the juggernaut that was the Islanders back then. But the 94 and 2011 runs were really close, and you thought that they could do it. And the fall from grace from 2011 till now is part of the issue as well. While the Flames, the last time it was a 04, and then they had that, and they've had a GM change since, a couple GM changes since then. And now, I just think it's there's every market's gonna be a little bit different, everything, but I think there's I think going back to the original question about whether or not all this is content driven, I think it is, because I think there is so many people looking for content, looking to separate themselves and become become part of the narrative, as opposed to just letting the team be the narrative.
There is also a degree of the higher profile people trying to fight for control of the conversation. I think we see this with Matt Sakaris. He put out some reporting about I guess some friction within the Aquilini family over should Francesco be leading the review, and is he too close to Benning and all that. I know I'm kind of paraphrasing it fairly loosely here, but Sakaris puts that out, and then that kind of is the news cycle for a day, right? And so there's that kind of competition going as well in terms of the bigger names. Who's gonna drive the stories for that day? And sometimes it's Rick Dollywall put out some reporting, and then that's part of the news cycle. And there's because we had the 2 radio stations before, there's so many of these names that are still in the business that now have a different platform that this is what you get. It is a lot of content, but it's also a lot of trying to drive the agenda here.
And wade through the content to try and find what the actual news is, because It's something I struggle with because there's so many things that are called reports and rumors when they're 90% of them are just speculation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you can definitely tell that Sakaris is just trying to like be the pot stirrer for sure.
It's fascinating. I mean, and in terms of changes, it's an interesting off season. I mean, the other thing that Benning said is the other thing that, I mean, the thing that kind of made me shake, one of the other things that made me shake my head is he said John Weisbert is good at what he does. What does he do? Does anyone know? Whatever he does, he's good at, but we don't know what it is. Anyway.
Jim said that he's his assistant. He's basically an assistant general manager, helps the general manager general manage. I don't know. Okay. There's not much else to say about it.
No. Okay. I'll put that over there. But in terms of what they do in the offseason, I mean, it sounds like some free agent things will be going on, and I mean, they got a lot of decisions to make, and they may have to dig into the core to make a trade. It is fascinating, but I do think the one thing that is clear to me is I think the players generally do want. I think for the most part, I mean, there probably is someone that would prefer. I would assume there's probably, like, when you get 20, 30 players, one probably would prefer a change of scenery. So for the most part, the players have saying they want to be there, and I think that that's a good sign.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lack of team unity with the Canucks. I think that the bonds are strong there. I think that took a little bit of a hit with the loss of Chris Tanev and Jacob Markstrom in particular in the offseason, but also Troy Stetcher and Toffoli hadn't been around very long, but a guy with a cup and a very good player. And so when they lost those guys, they did lose a little bit of the cohesiveness on the team. But I think after coming out of the COVID shutdown there and how they played against the Leafs. I think I'd sit here at this point and say that the team unity's pretty strong. I don't have a concern about that. I think the guys are like playing for each other and are looking forward to next season and getting off to a better start.
Yep.
You're here.
Speaking of Chris Tanev, you got to give him a shout out. The guy played with broken ribs.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised at all. That's the type of player Chris Tanev is. That's why I was so upset that the Canucks didn't bring him back. Yep. I still think that I think the stats driven, analytics driven analysis does not take into account everything that a player brings to a team on and off the ice. And I think Tanev is one of those guys who just never gets I don't think he ever gets the props he deserves for what he brings to a team, what off the ice and on the ice. And I think it like I said, when I saw that, I was like, oh, Chris Tanev being Chris Tanev, look at him go.
Yeah.
But in terms of, like, I'm gonna dovetail this back into the Canucks again, because Devin's not here to stop me.
He could jump on and then he can do a run in.
That's something that's something that the Canucks blue line needs. And why I look at the conundrum that the Canucks have with that blue line. It definitely needs a shakeup. It definitely needs something. But you look at the left side when you got Quinn Hughes and Jack Rathbone, and then you've got then you got to figure out someone else to bring in, and whoever they have to bring in has to penalty kill, because Quinn Hughes isn't penalty killing, and are you going to have Jack Rathbone as a penalty kill next year as a rookie? No. So, and then you're going to have all three of your right side defensemen be penalty killers as well, but you also need to find a way to improve your blue line, because it wasn't good enough this year. You don't have the skill up and down it to be able to move the puck the way you need to. Hopefully Rathbone changes that, because if Rathbone can come in and make that third pair have the ability to move the puck better, that'll be huge. That'll change. That'll be a game changer for the Canucks, I think. But then, like I said, you still need to find a way to have 4 penalty killing defensemen in that 6. And when you've got Tyler Miles will be one of them. You'll have, and then after that, you've got Edler who needs a new deal, Hamonic who needs a new deal, Schmidt we don't know, and then there was talk that there might be one player who wants out, and I do wonder if that's who it is. I hope not. I think he's going to be someone who's going to be who's going to take a huge step forward next year. I think this being so outgoing, I think this year was such a tough outgoing, being on a new team, everything was going against someone like him. So I think if you can find a way to keep him, that'll be huge, because even if you don't keep Edler, you can slot him over to the left side, or you keep him on the right side, bring in another left side guy that can play a second, third line minutes, and then that helps it. But I look at that blue line and it desperately misses someone like Chris Tanev who calms things down, and maybe Hominick does stay because he can do that, and I think he, again, was someone who we didn't see the best of because of everything he went through this year.
For sure. I just want to quickly go back, I guess, a half topic, still related to this, though, in the sense that, like, we all know changes are coming, and because Sean mentioned that there's a likelihood of more than one buyout, and the fact that Benning also just openly spoke about buyouts, I want to ask the question of, we all know Ericsson's going to be one. Who's the other one, if there is going to be multiple? That's the question I have.
Jake Virtanen.
Yeah.
Not unless there's whatever happens allows them to get out from under his contract without the buyout, a termination of some sort. I think he was a buyout option before that even came about. He's young enough that they get a significant amount of cap space back for that, despite the amount of money that he's owed. Because he's young enough. He is young enough. His buyout cap hit for this, if they do it for next season, is only $50,000. So they save what is his cap hit right now? 2.5.
Yeah, I think it's 2.5.
Yeah, 2.55. So they save over just over $2 million in actually no, just they save $2.5 million in cap space by buying Jake Virtanen out, and it makes too much sense that he's not someone you want to bring back with everything that's gone on, and he was someone who was not living up to that contract, and you can bring in someone who can fill that bottom 6 role a little bit better than Jake Virtanen does. I think it makes so much sense. I don't know if it's Eriksson this year, actually, because it's the difference between burying him in the minors versus the buyout is less than $1 million. It's only $850,000, I believe, for cap hit for this year, and then you don't have to worry about his the next season. But I do think that they will look at that for sure.
You can cross your fingers as a Canuck fan and hope that Eriksson just retires and walks away from the end of his contract. But we'll see about that. The name I was going to bring up in regards to buyouts is Jay Beagle. He is on LTIR right now, so that I assume you can't buy out when the guy's on LTIR. But $3 million cap hit, 2 years remaining on his deal, if I'm not mistaken. So
buyout.
That to me is the other one. Actually, one more year after this season. Sorry, but that's another one to me. I think where that's a good buyout candidate.
The cap hit for Jay Beagle's buyout is 2.2. So you actually with that you actually gain more cap room by just burying him in the minors.
Yeah, and I think if you just look at the roster and trying to get younger, and you've got Tyler Mott, like where does he fit, right? Like.
I still don't mind Beagle as a fourth line center. Yes, he's overpaid for it, but I still like him in that role. It's just you need to find a way to actually get a third line center that can help build a line around, and they can. It's not offensive black hole. Yeah. basically what they wanted Sutter to be is what they need to find, because they've got Mott and they've got Podkolzin coming in. I think if you have those two as your third line wingers going into next season with a good third line center, I think you can create a line that can take some pressure off the top two lines because they'll be able to produce offense as well as be responsible defensively. The other thing, but one thing I do want to mention in that aspect is, I don't think there is a true shutdown third line center out there that's available that makes sense for the Canucks. I think that they're going to have to find someone who has majority of what they're looking for and hope that they can take that next step.
The other thing too about the Canucks is, does JT Miller stay at center, and do they next year find ways to lengthen the depth of the winger group such that they can have Horvat and Pettersson and Miller on separate lines? That'll be interesting to see as well. I would think that they're probably pretty happy with the play of JT Miller as a center, and he's made it pretty clear in public he'd like to keep doing that.
Well, let me throw a scenario out here. If there is going to be an overpay, I'm just going to throw this out there. Could you bring in a Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and maybe move? Okay,
who would you be moving?
Sorry for cutting you off right there, Kev, but it's just where's the cap space coming from, even with these buyouts?
Well, I mean, if you are going to overpay,
who's going out the other way is the question.
Yeah. I mean, I do think I will be bold and say that there is going to be a higher name player on this team is going to move. I just don't see how you don't do that. Like, you have to. But I just thought that was an option. That's okay. What happened with Slava Voyanov? What did the Kings do in that situation?
Oh, I think they suspended him, and then I think they were able to terminate his contract, I believe is what happened. So they didn't have to take the cap hit or anything, but they were able to terminate it with no cap hit and with no cap implications. It's a completely different situation. I don't know whether or not that'll happen with all this, but no matter what, I really don't think we're seeing Jake Virtanen in a Canucks uniform ever again.
No, I agree. As far as buyout options, I'll just quickly, my wonder is, depending on where he's, I mean, a couple of other names I would throw in. Antoine Roussel, maybe. And I wonder what's going to happen with Michael Furland. I wonder if
I think is going to stay if he comes. I think Furland's a LTIR Robidaw Islands for the rest of his career, unfortunately. I just looked at Roussel. He's a $3 million cap hit. It's 1.7 cap hit on the books if the Canucks buy him out. So that's a little bit more than what you would get for burying him in the minors. I think you have to look at that, but he's also someone that is a very much a thermometer of where the team is at, and when he's going, the team's going type deal. So I could see them doing it, but I also think that his value in the locker room and when he's playing well is close enough to that $3 million.
A comment on Roussel. I mean, I think he's a candidate to be taken in the Seattle expansion draft as well.
I could see them potentially looking at him. That'd be great. that would solve some issues there. I do think that it's something they would look at for sure.
Yeah,
especially with they've got Zach McEwen, who I like as a fourth liner. Highmore and Lockwood are looking like players that could be there, let alone Cole Lind. They've got some younger options that I think need to get serious looks. but I still think they need to. I think the big one is the big thing for the Canucks is they need to figure out that 3C, that third line center role. Whether it is JT Miller, whether it is bringing in someone else, but yeah, if they can figure that out and then figure out what that blue line, like figure out why that blue line isn't as good as I think it could be. I think that fixes a couple of the major issues that were really plaguing them this year.
Okay. Well, let's leave it there. I will be back tonight to recap the Jets and the Oilers. I will be doing that. But how do we follow everyone else?
I am Beardy Canucks 03 on Twitter.
I'm on Twitter at tnoble, TNOBLE.
And I'm at Schneids on most social media.
Devin, who's in the comments, says as Gordhouse09. And he has that comment here. I'll just leave that there. I'm KVOLE podcast _hockey, Facebook.com, the hockey podcast, YouTube.com, the hockey podcast. As I said, I will be back tonight recapping Canucks and Jets, or Jets.
Whoa.
Oilers and Jets.
Yeah.
And yeah, so if you have any comments, please feel free to comment, tell your friends about the videos, and we will talk. Thanks, everyone. We will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.